Let's be real. If we had to take notes on every single thing that we read, then we'd probably not be reading much at all. And if I personally had to follow some complicated multi-step methodology for taking notes on books, then I probably wouldn't be taking many notes either. So while I do take a lot of notes on many of the things that I read, there are so many more books and articles that I'm just content to enjoy notelessly. And there are some that I do take notes on in my own suboptimal way. So in this video, I'm going to take you with me as I process notes from a book that I've recently read and have decided to take notes on, The Culture Map by Erin Meyer. These days I read almost all of my books on some sort of e-reader, and in this case it was the Kindle. I really love reading on the Kindle because I can just highlight things on the book, and then those highlights, thanks to a service called Readwise, are then transferred over to my Obsidian vault. I will leave a link in the description below to how you can sign up for Readwise and get double the trial. I've been using them for years and have talked about them a lot, but they are awesome. So here's what my highlights look like when they're imported by Readwise. The format of everything here is something that you can set in your Readwise settings. For example, I've specifically asked Readwise to put in this TVZ tag. TVZ is my personal tag. That it stands for Tversettelen, but it just means like inbox or something that I need to process. These are the highlights for either when I was using the Kindle app or when I was using my Kindle. This is a pretty dense book and I want to examine it somewhat thoroughly, so I'm actually going to create a new book page for it called The Culture Map. And I put this in a different folder called Book. If you look here, you'll see that this is under Readwise Books. And that's just because I want to separate the thoughts that are my own and the thoughts that are direct copies from somebody else, in this case, the author Erin Meyer. From here, I'm going to add the template that I usually use for books, and that's going to look a little bit like this. So it has the date there, and for the author, I'm going to put in Erin Meyer. I don't have a page for her yet, but that's fine. I may not necessarily need that. So now I'm going to have this split screen and start taking notes while I'm rereading what I already read. I like to save the summary for the very end, so I'm going to go to the main points. One of the fundamental ideas in this book is that all of the cultures can be kind of judged or categorized by 8 scales. There are 8 scales for categorizing a culture. And then I'm going to put in the different scales. Actually, before this, probably another one of her main points is that culture is the foundation, is the starting point for an individual's personality. Okay, communicating, low context, high context. So now I have those 8 scales, which is really what the entire book is about. So then I want to kind of describe each of these scales in detail while I'm reading through my highlights. Also open up here the outline. So culture is a starting point. There are 8 aspects to distinguish cultures in terms of working habits. And the third premise, understanding the cultural context of other people, can help you communicate with them. Okay, so tips that she gives. Well, first is that you should prefer low context. And then she says that you can use the language in the book to state upfront what your expectations are. Avoid working across cultures if possible. Choose people who are internationally minded to do the communicating. Tailor your communication style to the type of work that needs to be done. I'm just going to be fast forwarding a little bit here and there just to save some time. I am going through all of the 8 different aspects and just fleshing out what they mean. All right, so I've gone through this entire note and I've transferred over some of the concepts that I feel represent this book the best. So I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, it's not complete, but it never is. So at some point you just have to say, like, that's enough. I'm going to remove that TVZ tag and then also start to try and fill in some of these other things like the summary and the related part. So let me remove this and I'm going to go back to the summary. This is why I like to do the main points before I do the summary, because sometimes I don't remember the summary at the beginning. So I'm also looking at the outline here to try and guide me while I'm creating the summary. So here's the summary that I came up with. While individuals may have different personality traits from others from the same culture, understanding cultural tendencies is helpful because a culture informs a starting point for how an individual sees the world. And then different cultures have different ways of working, especially when it comes to 8 dimensions, which are communicating, evaluating, persuading, leading, deciding, disagreeing, and scheduling. Identifying the culture you're in and the cultural tendencies that are at play can help you tailor your approach and improve your understanding of your colleagues. I'm pretty happy with that. So now that I pretty much have written down what the author intended to say, I want to think more critically about it. I want to apply it to myself. I want to think about what other notes I have in my vault or what other interests that I have already can relate to this, and whether some other concepts may agree with this or disagree with this. And the first thing I can think of is that I already have a culture map that I created, and let me show you that as well. This page already has how each of my countries, or the countries that I've lived in, score supposedly on this map according to the author. I've got my personal map across the 8 scales, and then I've plotted my own scores against my countries. So I created an Excalidraw drawing for that. This is a great way to aggregate things because this is something that's going to be valuable for me. These are my notes. So these are all of my countries and where I fit in. So it's interesting to see, how this is my original culture. I was born in the Philippines and spent my formative years in the Philippines, and yet I'm actually quite far from the Philippines in most aspects, except for this trusting one, where I'm surprisingly relationship based. So what I did here in Excalidraw was I imported this image, and then I drew these like little circles to put where I was, just to overlay it on top of this. Now I definitely want to have this in my cultural map note, so I'm going to force save it so that that automatically updates this image, and then I'm going to embed the image just as a nice distillation, because when I go to this page in the future, I'm probably going to want to know how I scored on it. So I'm going to put that, and I'm not going to show you this note, but I also actually did this for work. This is a book that I learned about from work. So I'm also going to link to it, but I'm not going to show you that one. What else would this be related to? Cultural map. It seems like it has a lot to do with communication. And maybe, do I have something on like multiculturalism or something? Multicultural. Interesting. It could very well have something to do with culture shock. I'd forgotten that I have a page on that. What does it say? Okay, not that much. Oh, okay. Oh, I have my video on culture shock. That's interesting. How about flag theory, maybe? I don't have something on nationality, and I probably should. This is something that I talk about a lot. So I'm going to create something here on the related one, maybe multinationality. And I'm also going to I'm going to put this here. I'm going to use an alias though, just to keep it as nationality for this context. Let's open up this communication one. And I'm going to open up an Excalibrain session. So as you can see, I've changed a lot of how Excalibrain looks to me because I just like these colors a lot more than the standard ones. When I zoom into these ones that have the red lines on them are actually ones that I haven't created. Do I have a page just on culture? It's kind of interesting that I don't have one based on culture. I probably should just tag it. Not tag, but add something based on that. Now, where would this fit in? If I go to communication, let's unlink this and go into communication. All right, there's a lot more. There's developer relations. I guess that's one thing. It definitely is related to the job, to work. So now I'm going to challenge myself to think in terms of relationships. So child is culture map. Let's say children. And then I'm going to add these as well. This is definitely a parent. Communication. Yeah, culture shock as well. I think all of these are parents. And then what are siblings of it? I guess Strengths Finder actually is kind of like another personality sort of test that might work. The Myers-Briggs indicator, Myers. Okay, I don't have a page for that apparently, but I'm still going to include it as a sibling. And then maybe I'll add personality, even though that note doesn't exist either. That's fine. I don't necessarily think that I have to create all of these notes just to make them useful. In particular, I think is this communication one, especially since I've already created quite a bit on it. Let's open up the outline here. Communication and language. Communication is the highest level of learning, media of communication. How about something like when communication goes wrong? Reasons why communication may fail. Cultural norms. So I'm going to link to culture again. Cultural norms can influence the way that people both communicate information and understand it. Going to refer specifically to my summary of it, not the raw material anymore, can help us identify differences in expectations because of culture and more effectively by respecting other people's preferences. That's how it fits into communication. What is the relationship between communication and culture? I think they're siblings. Siblings. I'd like to add another thing here, criticisms, because I have a few criticisms of this. So some of my criticisms are lack of concrete data, because Erin Meyer says a lot of these things and she does cite some research, but I feel like she doesn't always cite them, and so that kind of leaves me with the impression that maybe a lot of this is anecdotal. I also think there's a heavy emphasis on some Western and some Eastern or Asian cultures, overemphasis on cultural stereotypes. I think that a lot of the stuff that she has said is based on the culture, and even though she takes care to stress that it is a starting point, I think a lot of what she says could very easily fall into stereotyping, which I assume is not what she wants. I always try to think of criticisms for things that were expressed in a book. I think that it is important to think critically, even if I agree with most of the things. So here I am just filling out some of my criticisms and adding a few more. Okay, now that I feel that I have enough of the criticisms written down there, I would like some way to aggregate them into something slightly more visual. And what I'm thinking is I want to specifically delve down into an aspect that maybe she didn't stress. She stresses more on the different aspects, on the different dimensions. But what is really relevant to me is how you can communicate across cultures. So that's what I'm going to try and distill my learnings into and about. To do that, I'm actually going to use a service called Typeshare. This, I know, isn't Obsidian. Typeshare is a way to post to a few places, so that's Twitter, LinkedIn, and also Medium. And they have specifically an atomic essay, which I'm most interested in, but they also have like tweet formats and thread formats. I really like their templates because it means that I'm not starting from nothing. And I'm going to look for something that makes sense to me. A lot of these are very, I don't know, salesy and clickbaity, and I don't really like that. But there are some that are pretty good structures, and they're all proven by the people that created them who have amassed quite a Twitter following. Okay, so I kind of like this one. The idea is to distill my understanding of what Aaron Meyer has said. I'm actually going to put it in Obsidian. So I'm going to create something called, I'm going to say rules for topic, persons, experts, rules for topic. And then in here, I'm going to put in the title, and I'm pretty much going to copy everything that's in here. And it copies the, like, what's bold and stuff as well. So now this is a template that I can use. So originally I was just going to actually write the thing in Obsidian, but I kind of like how Typeshare has it all laid out, and I also like that it's easy to share to Twitter, which I did actually end up doing. So I just decided to work in Typeshare directly. So this is what I've got now. Here's how to communicate across cultures according to the culture map by Aaron Meyer. The culture you identify with isn't everything, but it does affect how you communicate. In the culture map by Aaron Meyer, the author argues that understanding cultural preferences for ways of working may help us understand individuals. Here's the breakdown. Rule number 1, communicate how you want to communicate. The best thing you can do to improve communication is to talk about it. When you join a new team, you can start by explaining how you like to work and collaborate. If you're a people manager, do you welcome public dissent? And if you're an individual contributor, do you prize freedom in determining what you work on? Begin by explaining what kind of communicator you are. Rule number 2, default to low context communication. In a multicultural environment like the internet, relying on cultural references or experiences is alienating at worst and incomprehensible at best. When you communicate, try to set the technical foundations instead of assuming that others are beginning from the same place. Over-communicate, even when you think it's obvious. Rule number 3. Adjust negative feedback to individual preference. Just because you prefer direct criticism doesn't mean others do. Ask the people you work with how they respond best to criticism. Do they prefer public or private feedback? Do they just want you to spit it out or phrase it gently? Rule number 4 is to tailor your communication style to your objective. Different styles are better for different goals. If the task is to innovate or to include, then prefer consensual decision-making that increases the diversity of opinion and facilitates creativity. If the task is to fix an issue, then leverage the trust that you should have built already among your team to take charge and get everyone working efficiently. Rule number 5 is when in doubt, ask. This is true for most things in life. You can't possibly get it right 100% of the time. Instead, you should use the language in the culture map to ask people what they prefer. When in doubt, ask. Okay, so that is my little atomic essay. I'm going to download the image here, and I'm going to put it in my Obsidian vault. And I'm going to call it How to Communicate Across Cultures. Now in Obsidian, I'm just going to import it. Maybe I'll put it at the bottom here where I talk about understanding cultural context. And then I'm also going to add this to this page that I just created. And I'll add a citation here actually. Then I can copy this. And then I'm going to paste it there so that when I see it in preview mode, there's like this little one here that then refers to that. By the way, I've gotten a few people asking me about this, so maybe I should mention it now. This is just a feature within default Obsidian, so I'm not using any plugins to create footnotes. I will add a link in the description below to the help page, the official Obsidian help page on how to create footnotes because I use it all the time and think it's pretty useful. Editor Nicole here. I just wanted to say that later on that night, I still felt like doing something more about it, so I made this little visual in Excalidraw using my iPad and my Apple Pencil. It's nothing special, but this is all hand drawn, and it was really cool to be able to do it on the fly on my tablet and then transfer it into my notes. So I embedded it into my culture map page. This is like a little visual about this communication part in particular and the difference between high context cultures and low context. These workflow videos are always tricky because I don't want to give the impression that this is how I process every single book, or that this is how you should process them. There are thousands of books that I read and never even highlight, and even the ones that I do choose to spend some time on, like this one, I don't always process this way. This is just how I felt like doing it today. If you'd like to see more workflowy type videos, then check out this video on how I process and learn technical concepts like observability using Obsidian. And if you'd like something a little bit more lightweight, check out this one on how I prep for my D&D session every week. Both of them use Obsidian, though they're very different use cases. Dankon perspekti. Thank you for watching.